Like that's pretty wicked for as compact as this is. I am not hitting the little guy. There it is. And I'm out. Hey guys, welcome back to Triple F Shooting. It has been a minute, like maybe around 6 months or so. So I figured I'd start the new year off with a video, and was actually reached out to by a specific vendor of weapon lights and other types of light. That would be Olight. So don't normally do like flashlight reviews or anything, but it is a weapon light that can mount, so pretty cool. My relationship with Olight right off the bat, this is the first time I've ever done anything like directly for them. They basically sent me the product and that's kind of it. So sorry for the interruption guys, but post-editing Ethan here to remind, because I forgot, you can get this thing direct from Olight. I think it'll also be available on Amazon. Check the links in the description to get yourself 10% off. If you get it through their website, you get 10% off from getting it through the website and 10% off for using that link. So they'll save you a little bit of money on this thing. Thanks. So I get to use that, see what I think of it, and then tell you guys. So bias be known, I do really like the Olight just general hand lights for everyday carry, for use at work. I've had this Olight Baton 2 for a very long time. I bought it on a sale thinking I'll just try it out. It's rechargeable. The size is not too big, but it puts out a ton of light, and I had to inspect stuff at work on a regular basis, so why not? Really liked this. Had it for so long that I've dropped it quite a few times. The clip eventually broke off of it, and a lot of the anodizing has dents and dings in it where it's hit the floor, things like that, but still going strong, just don't have a clip for it anymore. After that, moved over to this Arkfeld, something. Anyway, got it because it was fairly thin, had a clip that actually was still on there, and realized that not only does it have multiple modes of brightness, it also has a green laser, which is, you know, something. I guess people use that. I can't say I've used it for much other than making my kids chase it like cats, but it also has a UV light, and I have used that in a hotel room. So if that's your thing and you want to be able to make sure you don't have anything like left over on your face, that's pretty handy. No one really cares about the hand light at the moment. We want to get into the actual meat and potatoes. So the new light that has come out from Olight, or will be coming out around the time of the release of this video, is the Olight PLX. I am not super big on doing like the unboxing video, like, oh, look how it comes out of a box, but there's stuff in here. We'll look at it closer in a little bit. The main thing, the only thing that I was super worried about with the box is the fact that it tells me what the lumen count is on the front. Lumens anymore isn't the only way to check out what your light can do. A lot of people compare lumens and candela to see how much throw we've really got. And although this doesn't say the candela on the front, I can tell you it's got quite a throw. It's not quite as tight of a beam, but again, this is a freaking pistol light, so a little over the top. Really impressive. I thought it was going to be a rifle light when I first heard about it, and it's not. It's really small. So just to give you a quick idea, again, we'll look at it closer here in a second, but my go-to weapon mount light is a TLR1 HL. That's pretty much on anything that I feel like I'm gonna, you know, duty carry, like a real hardcore Tommy Tough Nuts or whatever. But I really like the TLR1 HL. Takes a couple of CR123s, throws a very bright beam, especially at pistol ranges. Nice big wide flood, and I think my favorite thing about it is the toggle system, where you've got kind of a seesaw lever so I can get momentary if I push down, or flip it up for constant on. This is probably my favorite, and I just like the way they look. And price-wise, they are much more affordable than like a Surefire X300, and they don't quite stick out as far. So compared it mainly to that, you can see that it is about the length of the main body of a TLR1 without the bezel or head. and it's actually quite a bit narrower. Again, I'll show you that up close once we get it down on the table and I can look at it here with you. To start with, I compared this against pretty much any lights that I currently have. First being the light that's riding on this Ruger Mark IV Tactical is an Olight Valkyrie Mini 2. And I swear to God, the only reason I bought this thing is because when the Hellcat first came out, this was the only thing that I could get small enough to fit it correctly. The TLR7 sub wasn't out quite yet in that size or that fitment, so got this, had to grind down the key just a little bit to make it fit, and someone actually made a holster for it. So this light really hasn't been on anything since I quit carrying a Hellcat, and my wife doesn't really mess with the weapon light side of things, so now it pretty much permanently rides. Oh God, I'm doing this so wrong-handed. I felt awful. Permanently rides on this guy in this neat little Coltac Varmint Wrangler holster that rides like a chest rig. That light's actually fairly bright considering the size. Again, rechargeable and all that good stuff is usually what kept me away from that type of light on a weapon, but given what I'm doing with that thing, not that big a deal. Against that, the PLX makes that PL Mini 2 look like small potatoes. Also compared it against probably my favorite gun to shoot at the moment. Not so worried about the gun, but on here I have a Surefire Mini Scout. I think it's a 340C that throws around 500, something like that, lumens, and has quite a bit of candela. So this thing does an awesome job. Again, this thing trumped it by quite a bit, and size-wise, we are quite a bit smaller. Maybe not as narrow a profile, but much more compact. That being said, that's running off a CR123, just an individual one, and this is a rechargeable battery source, so probably got a little bit more juice to work with if I was to guess. The other thing that we checked this against that was the most impressive is riding on this Steyr AUG, and that is a Surefire Scout Light, and it's the Pro with the ginormic rechargeable battery in there, and this thing is a beast. It's probably way too much for like indoors. Once I pop up the video of what this thing is doing at about 200 yards, you'll kind of understand what I mean. When you put this in a 15 feet of room, you're just throwing a really mean hot spot on the wall with a little bit of spill. If you were in front of it and taking all of that light right in the face, you're probably having a bad day. Your retinas are all burned and your face is melting. So it's kind of a weapon in itself. I think that was the most impressive point of this light. It didn't quite, but pretty well held up with that great big rifle light. I don't know what more you could ask. I'll get into pros and cons later, but my one point of contention with it was why do I need that much on a handgun light? At first, when I was just kind of walking around playing with it by hand, I was like, this is going to be stupid. There's no way it's going to really work out on a handgun. After mounting it to a handgun and playing with it a little bit, it makes more sense than just walking around sighting over the top of it like a dork. But let's show a little bit of those comparison videos if I haven't already, and then we will break off into kind of the function of this thing and then the pros and cons. I don't know if this will be low enough to see it, but so it fits in a surplus TLR1 holster. Oh. Now if I could just shoot, and it did not fall off and or loosen. Oh God. That would have been expensive. I am not hitting the little guy. There it is. Alright guys, so an up close look at the Olight PLX real quick, just to show you where everything is and what it looks like. So cool, says Olight over here, and PLX over there. The front of the light's actually really neat. Your top two lights there, the LEDs, are you're getting your flood setting, and the bottom great big one is where you're getting that kind of like hotspot or spotlight throw, as I call it. So right off the bat, to do that, you can see I have a kind of toggle switch right here. Right now it's set to the hotspot. Down is set for your floodlight. So it's just that easy. And I'm out. Now the cool thing is I've got that mode, and now I've got more of a flood. So still really good coverage. This is obviously better if you're trying to ID something at distance. All right. It is a fairly positive thing. It does not stick off the side of the gun, or I'm sorry, off the side of the light body a whole bunch. You can see just barely there. It's sticking up maybe like a 1/16 of an inch or something like that. So it's not just dangling out and getting snagged by everything. So that was a good idea on their part to keep it from being something that's getting changed on you all the time. You can see the adjustment setting right here. You've got kind of spring tension, and I can slide this back and forth to move quite a bit back and forth on the, just to give you an example. If I move it all the way forward, it's pretty close to where I want it to be to mount to this Glock 19. If I had a slightly different setup, I could move it way back. This is going to present, if I would rather have that sticking out for whatever reason, if I have really long fingers and it's more comfortable for me, or if it's going on a different gun, whatever it is. I know it takes quite a bit of an adjustment for this to go on that Ruger 22 pistol than on this Glock 19. Your mount adjustment there is similar to a lot of other stuff where it is on a spring. You push that out, get it locked on the rail, and then tighten that down. They do provide you with a couple of things. You get this fancy little tool that there's your kind of coin slot for tightening that guy. You also have a tiny, tiny Allen for changing out your key piece. Right now it's got the Glock piece in there. The other piece is the 1913 rail adapter. There is a little bit of a difference. You can probably get away with just running the Glock one if you're going to do that, and then it'll still go into other stuff. It's just not a perfect fit. You can even rotate this guy if you need more adjustability. You can pop this out, spin it around, and you can still screw it in this way, so I could flip that 180 degrees if I needed to. They also include an extra spring, which is a really good idea. The only thing I don't have pictured here is the USB-C that is wrapped up inside of here, but hey, it looks like a USB-C, so that's pretty neat. You can imagine what that is. Other than that, the gun does come, I keep doing that because I don't talk about lights very often. The light does come with a pretty decent user manual that is illustrated for us dum-dums. One of the things it does is kind of shows you runtime of everything. In the spotlight mode, it's going to be able to run for, it looks like 44 minutes. I don't have my glasses on, so this is kind of, all moot for me. You guys can probably see that. Now, there is a high and a low mode. To me, I'm going to run this thing in high every bit. I'm never going to not run this in the high mode. The low mode's still fairly respectable as far as like older lights are concerned. You still get like 300 lumens out of the flood and 200 out of your spotlight, but I'm not ever going to mess with that. That's how you plug it in. That's pretty cool. That's how you change all of your adapters and whatnot. But in here, it does actually show you how to adjust from high or low mode. There we go. So depending upon what mode you've got it in, to get bright mode, you have to double tap. I have switched that over. In the fully written instructions, it shows you how to change your bright. Oh, there it is right there, 9.1, to change your brightness level. Double press and hold, and it will blink to show you what mode you're in. I'm leaving that thing in high mode. I see no other reason. But that just gives you an up close and personal. Real quick, where you actually charge, it's a con for me. We'll go over it in a minute, but I don't like that battery door not having any kind of gasket or anything to try to keep water out of there. I just wish it had something better there. The door is fairly positive, so that's nice. It clicks in place and takes a little bit of effort to open, so it's not just going to dangle on you, but I really wish that had something to keep it waterproof. That's just me. One other thing of note, if you leave this thing on for a while, it is going to get very hot. That's kind of common with most lights. If you have it on for a long time, it's going to get warm. This one definitely gets warm. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to walk around with this thing like turned on all the time like it's some kind of headlamp, especially if it's attached to a gun and you're pointing that gun at everything. So there's my soapbox for a second, but we'll get back to the main video. Alright, so now that you've got an idea of how this thing works, or at least the general overall look, feel, and functions, being able to go from that hot spot down into that more of a flood throw, what do we actually think about it? Overall, we'll start with pros. This thing is tiny. It is really small for the amount of light that it puts out. It punches way above its weight and size, and it's really impressive. I like the fact that it has so much adjustability on your kind of fitment to your gun. Every gun's got a little bit of different rail system, trigger guard, whatever you've got, and you can make this fit pretty much anything. So that's pretty cool. I also really like the button style. I like the fact that I can push down or forward to make this run. That means that if I do decide to mount this on something that is, more of a rifle style on a long gun, I can mount it on the side. It's not taking up hardly any more room than, say, a standard Surefire Streamlight. Surefire's got the cool scout mount where you can kind of roll it up and around, so I'll give it that. But if it's just direct side mounting, this is going to be pretty much as small as any Streamlight I've ever put on a gun or anything like that. And I can still easily operate it by pushing forward, where a toggle switch is going to be a little bit odd mounted like on the 3 or 9 o'clock position of a rifle. Other than that, the thing feels pretty well built. I like the ability to go from a really high hot spot down to more of a flood style light. The only thing in my head that makes any sense for is, say, if I am outdoors and I'm going to move into a building with a gun and I want to go from being able to positively ID things at 100 or more yards to I would like a large wide beam so I can very easily search indoors or whatever it is. That's a neat feature. It makes way more sense to me in a rifle setup than it does in a pistol, but still cool that you get the choice. I like that you can choose between different modes of operation. Like right now, I have this thing set up in what I would call like hot mode, where it's giving you all of the lumens on the first press, and to get to the lower light setting, you actually have to do a little bit different scenario of presses. I could go back to the manual to make sure I understand it, but you actually can, right out of the box, it gives you a manual. It's set up in like a low mode, and you can switch it over to the high mode, which I immediately did, because if I'm running a weapon light, I want it to be fairly hot, whether I'm in the flood or spotlight. Now, cons. One of the cons for me is going to be the mount itself system. It's basically similar to like a TLR1 or anything else, where I unscrew the screws on a spring, so I push that spring in, lock it to the gun, and then tighten things up. I understand, at least I think, why they went with just a slotted bolt head rather than kind of a TLR1, with little wings for like a thumb screw setup. It's just not as quick to on and off. That's kind of a stupid con, because once it's on the gun, I'm probably not going to just take it on and off willy-nilly, but it just, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the cuts for the actual rail mount aren't as deep or what, but I felt like I had to kind of hold it up and in place on the gun a little bit tight, like actually keep compression there while I'm tightening it up, rather than it just locking on and I tighten. So First time I put it on, it was a little wobbly feeling. It's not that big a deal. So as far as cons go, it's not a huge one. The biggest, ginormousest con for me is that battery door. In the up close, you got to see that there's no gasket or anything like that. It may not matter. It may be like if I got my phone a little bit wet and it just says, you know, it keeps working but says you can't charge it while it's wet. I would really like to see some form of gasket or maybe a little bit more secure door on that charge port with like something to fill that void than what it is right now, where it's just kind of a nice little hinge and a metal flap. To follow on to that con, I'm not huge on rechargeable stuff. I know you can get backup battery banks and backup, you know, emergency charge stuff like that. I just also know that when my phone goes down, it's typically going to take minutes at least to get it back to where it's operational. Whereas if I have a battery, I open a battery hatch, take old batteries out, put new batteries in, close it, and I'm back to ready to go for however, you know, whatever that runtime is. Being rechargeable, it probably does have a better runtime, but I like being able to just jam things in holes and get them turned on. It doesn't everybody. So that's probably a major con for this thing. Otherwise, you know, you weigh everything out, this is really cool. This is a really neat idea. Again, I think it's better suited to like a rifle style light. So my maybe perfect scenario for this thing is something like this Recover tactical, you know, little Glock brace, or if you've got like a Flux Raider or something like that, where it's very compact, but the whole point of this is to get a little bit better distance on a handgun caliber with like a PDW. This starts to make more sense, where I might actually be able to push this out to about 100 yards, and I might need to ID something very well at that distance, or 50 yards or whatever it is, where a small pistol light is not going to do me as well as something like this, where I can pretty well compete up with larger rifle lights. Now with that, I'm losing my ability to carry my extra magazine, so I can mount it on the side of this thing, but to me that's sort of silly, considering the whole point is to keep the profile narrow. So I've got it with the rails on it thinking, oh, that'd be really cool, and it's really not. About the only thing I can think of that works pretty well is like this little mini, and I mean mini, scout light, where I can roll it up and around the corner and keep it fairly low profile. Don't worry, there's no one behind the camera, and guns are all cleared and good. But that's probably my favorite use case for this little bitty light that has such high power, is to mount it on something like a PDW, where I've got a combination of, you know, up close and personal and reaching out just a little bit better than I could with something like this. So all that being said, if you like rechargeable stuff, this is definitely something worth looking at. If you're on the fence about it, it's probably still worth looking at, especially on like an everyday carry gun. I'm still leaning toward battery powered stuff, but this is pretty cool. This is one of the cooler handgun lights I've seen in a long time, or at least it's fairly innovative. Neat job, Olight. So, one other thing I forgot to mention that is a win in my book, but is not maybe something everyone's going to be immediately worried about. If you're going to carry something like this, you need a holster. So I used to primarily carry this Glock 19 with a TLR1 on it in this Tier 1 concealment fancy holster. I have since had basically some form of like gastro fun or appendix, I don't really know what, and if I carry appendix for very long at all, I'm like in great abdominal pain. Went to a doctor, they didn't seem to care, and it went away, so now I just don't carry there anymore. Let's get it screwed on real quick. Okay, so Tier 1 concealment TLR1 holster for Glock 19 or CZP10, I think both fit. Ta-da! So if I chose to carry this light, I could do so with a secure fit in a good holster right off the bat. Now, am I wasting space by having this big giant hunk being further down? Absolutely. But at least I'm not completely dead in the water, because everybody knows that when a new light comes out, it takes time for the market to catch up and actually produce holsters that fit. Also, in the video, you probably saw that this guy, which is made for, it's not actually made for it, but this is a Surplus Marines Safariland holster that's actually meant for a, I think it's like an Insight M6 or whatever it is. It's fairly bulky. TLR1 fits in there real good, and since Safariland is more about the gun and just has a big cavity for the light, I can mount that PLX on my Beretta and jam it in there as well. Again, I don't like this as much for like a duty tactical type thing, because I might want to put new batteries in this and maybe somewhere where I can't just plug into a USB-C. So mileage may vary there. A lot of people, it really doesn't matter. The chances of me getting into a situation where I need that are slim to none. So it's just everybody likes to play out their own little theatrics in their head. Now that I'm done rambling, this is worth your time. It does look very sexy on a Glock 19. The lines and profile are very nice, and that's the most light I am ever, at least currently that I am aware of, I can put on this Glock 19 in that size. So very cool. If you dig Olight or you're looking for a rechargeable, very powerful light, it's worth checking out. So I have made 0 New Year's resolutions, but I promise I'm going to try to make some more videos this year just for my own sake, for the enjoyment and fun of it. I've got some stuff that I'd like to go over, this included. I think that's maybe my favorite gun to shoot right now. That thing is just a blast. And some other Resident Evil type based crap that I've spent a lot of time on. So all that being said, thanks for watching Triple F Shooting. We'll see you in the next one. Well, once I found it,